Tonight, folks, that's right. You are listening to the American Adversaries. It is drive time here on another hot and apparently going to be stormy again Central Florida evening. All right, I am Christopher Hart, and along with Lucas Paris, who has the Periscope up and running, we are coming to you live on AM 660, The Answer, from the Mercury Free Broadcasting Studios. And please don't forget, for the very best in Mercury Free dental care, call my dentist, Dr. James E. Hardy, at 407-678-3399. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about tonight. Boy, do we ever. The Supreme Court, as I predicted on this show, I know as recently as last week when Mike and I were talking about it, that the Supreme Court has upheld the language in the Unaffordable Care Act, or as Justice Scalia now calls it, the SCOTUS Care Act. But we'll talk about that. We'll go over the numbers, and we'll talk about the significance of this and why it wasn't too difficult to predict this one. But nonetheless, the Supreme Court has upheld the language in the Obamacare Act. We're also going to have on the show today with us B. Brian Blair. B. Brian Blair, of course, famous professional wrestler, wrestled with and traveled with, literally, in the same car with Dusty Rhodes. So he knew has some great stories and knew Dusty Rhodes quite well. He's going to join us later on in this hour, and we'll hold him through a little bit into the next hour of the show as well. But, of course, you are welcome to call if you have some opinions on the Supreme Court decision or anything else out there right now. You know the number. In case you don't, it's 407-774-8255. Nicholas Cicero is on the bridge. He's in there doing calisthenics, getting ready for his show tonight. WDW News, of course, that'll tee off at 8 o'clock live on our sister station, 1520 WBZW. So make sure you catch up with Nicholas Cicero there. So, like I said, go ahead if you like, give us a call, or, of course, at any time during the show, you're welcome to do that. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about. We'll talk about the Supreme Court thing, and then I also later on in the show want to talk about what I'm calling give them an inch, they'll take a mile. You know, this furor over, if you will, over the prohibiting the Confederate battle flag from flying just about anywhere. Is now, extended to monuments, including the one downtown here in Orlando at Lake Eola, which most people probably didn't even know was there until now. So if they had kept their big mouths shut, then nobody would care because they wouldn't know it was there anyway. So, I mean, what's the difference?
Apparently it's more oppressive now that people do see it and know it's there.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but it's worth talking a little bit about tonight. And we also got going to talk about the school cafeteria black market. This is a microcosm, if you will, of the phenomena of prohibition and how it is being played out, not just on the streets of America, not just in the burgs and the states of Mexico and South America and around the world. It's being played out in our very lunch rooms of our elementary and middle schools, elementary, middle, and high schools, evidently. And we're not talking about drugs or alcohol.
There's a demandee, there's a supplier.
That's right. Where there's a demand, there's a supply. I'll just give you a hint. The Hunger-Free Kids Act, Michelle Obama's main piece of her inspiration, if you will, to the world, has a lot to do with it. So if you'll just take that lead, you'll know what the black market goods are. But anyway, we'll talk about that later on in the show. Once again, the Supreme Court, in a monumental decision, I mean, bam, 2 days in a row, we've gotten what I consider to be extremely troubling news from Washington, D.C., having to do with the future of our country and commitments that are being made for us by the powers that be. Evidently, the Illuminati or somebody reached down and touched Chief Justice John Roberts. I guess it wouldn't have mattered with him anyway, because it was a 6-3 decision. John Roberts, Kennedy, and the three liberals, which would include Breyer, Kagan, and Sotomayor. They all teamed up against Scalia, Alito, and Thomas in deciding that the language in the Affordable Care Act, state and federal, actually mean the same thing.
Huh.
Yeah, that's right.
Ha!
The words state and federal now mean the same thing according to the Supreme Court. I guess it makes Bill Clinton a little bit smarter when he asked that word depends on what the meaning of the word is, right? Because the Supreme Court or some court could come along and just sort of change things up. Is can mean ain't, perhaps in some situations. Because state and federal
mean
can
the same
mean the same thing, according to these 6 Supreme Court justices. And now there's 2 reasons why I thought this would happen. 2, there would have been state. But I revealed on this show, a long time ago when I was in college, I studied 2 years of Marxism out here at the UCF under one of the most prominent Marxist professors in the United States at the time, Dr. John Reiser, and learned fairly early on that in Marxist language, state and federal do mean the same thing. In Marxist language, state and federal do mean the same thing. So perhaps, I don't know, they were referring to Marxist judicial writings or something, because in Marxist writing, when they refer to state, they were talking about the federal government. Our federal government is unique. Most countries have a state. They don't have a federal government. A federal government is a government of states coming together in a confederacy, if you will, to organize themselves to better protect borders, to help facilitate trade, and, of course, for security. Many countries don't have that system, so they don't have a federal government. So state does kind of fit, most things. But in our society, in our country, in our heritage, state and federal were 2 very distinct things. The states make up the federal government, but they are distinct and separate from. That's why we have the 10th Amendment and all that good stuff, right? But not according to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has said, well, even though we know that state and federal supposed to mean something different, we know that these folks over there really meant the same thing. And so we're going to help out the doofuses over there, and we're going to fix it for them, and we'll go ahead and say state and federal means the same thing because we know that's what they meant. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not what the Supreme Court's supposed to do. They're supposed to live by the letter of the law, not the supposed intent. Because how do you determine the intent? Well, one way might be to call witnesses and hear testimony. Like this guy, what was his name? Johnny Boy Gruber? Slick Johnny Boy Gruber, who went around the country bragging about how they did mean different things, that they did not mean for the federal government to provide subsidies because they meant to put political pressure on governments in the states to do it. So the states would be stuck with the bill in the long run rather than the federal government. Because another little lie that Johnny Gruber hid was that they know that this is going to balloon the cost of health care. Contrary to what the president said today, where he called this a victory for hard-working Americans. It's hardly a victory for hard-working Americans because they're going to take it up the wazoo. And there ain't going to be no doctor around to give them any relief. The Supreme Court does this. That's why nowhere in the Constitution does it say the Supreme Court should have this authority. It all came from one of the first decisions by John Marshall, the first Chief Justice. But we can get into that lesson some other time. But the bottom line here is, and we'll go through the reasoning and the dissent after the break. But I want to go to the phone line right now. We'll go ahead and take Eva's call. And Eva, thank you for calling this evening.
Yes, I want to say our country's going down the hill thanks to John Roberts. I will never support a Catholic. Never.
Well, now hold on a minute. Hold on.
No, I'm telling you, he done it.
But that has nothing to do with his being a Catholic. No, you cannot make that statement. What you can say is...
Listen to me. Don't cut me off.
All right, go ahead.
Let me explain what I mean.
All right.
As far as the Supreme Court goes, we have 3 or 4 Catholics on the Supreme Court. And I think it went 6-3. Is that the right?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Scalia and Alito are Catholics themselves. And
exactly.
Thomas might be. They were the dissenters. They are the ones who made the right decision.
I understand that.
Okay.
But the thing of it is their religious view played an important part in their decision.
If it had, the other Catholics would have sided with Alito, Scalia, and Thomas. Yes, they would have.
No, they don't.
Why?
Because we're all different, and we all take our religion different. It's personal.
This has nothing. I'm sorry, Eva. You're losing me on this one. This has nothing to do with their Catholicism. This has everything to do with their legal upbringing, shall we say, and their political upbringing. And
well, that's right. But they each had different upbringings, and their families have different priorities.
Yeah, well,
so you just walked into what you were telling me I was wrong for.
No, I don't think so, because once again, you had 2, if not 3, Catholics who were dissenting, in other words, voted against the language, and you had 3, I believe, who voted for it. So I still don't see your point here.
Well, here, I'm trying to make my point, and please forgive me, because you're more educated than I am, and that's why I think the difference is, because most of the people that are up there, they are who their parents raised and how they raised them. They may have a little more influence by the people they've met since they got out on their own and all this stuff, but that means there's 6 Supreme Court justices that are activists. And something else that I smell. Remember John Roberts, when he was given Obama the oath of office? He had to give it 2 times. I think there's something going on there.
Well, there's something going on, but it's not good law practice, that's for sure. Okay, Eva, thanks for your call. I appreciate it, and thanks for trying to clarify that for me. All right, if you would like to join the show, once again, the number is 407-774-8255. I'll try to break this down a little bit more when we come back from this break.